Hi guys, the other grammar point that I want to do with you is gerunds and infinitives, which you also need to know for your upcoming test. Now, you will remember that when we use ing and add it onto a verb, we usually do this with the present continuous tense. For example, he is working. But this ing can have another function too. It's not only used in the present continuous tense, but it is also used when we want to make a gerund. Now, what is a gerund? A gerund is when we create a noun from a verb by adding ing. In other words, we want to use a verb, but we want to put it in the position in a sentence where a noun would normally be. So we would either use it as the subject of a sentence, as in this case, reading helps you learn English, right? Or as the complement of a sentence. The complement is when we use a noun to describe another noun a little bit more, right? And in this case, the subject, right, is hobby, right? That's the noun that we're wanting to describe in a bit more detail. So her favorite hobby is reading. So reading is the complement to hobby. It tells us more about it. Her favorite hobby is reading. I enjoy reading. In this case, the gerund, of course, is the object of the sentence. So you can see that the gerund is a verb that is pretending to be a noun. It's a verb that is wearing a noun costume, if you will, or that is masquerading as a noun. How do we make the negative? We simply put a not with it. So, he enjoys working, he enjoys not working. Now, infinitives are the base form of the verb or the to form of the verb, right? And we use them differently, but it is very easy to get mixed up when you have to decide when to use a gerund and when to use the infinitive, because we can also use the infinitive in the same positions as the gerund. So we can also use it as the subject of a sentence, or as the complement, or as the object. So infinitives are the to form of the verb. So the infinitive form of learn is to learn. And an example here, to learn is important. There, the infinitive is the subject of the sentence. I don't know if you can see the sentence here, but where it's the complement, it is the most important thing is to learn, right? Now, it is where the infinitive is the object, or the gerund is the object of a sentence, that it becomes difficult to choose. In situations where you have to choose between a gerund and an infinitive, they are not usually interchangeable, but sometimes they are. And when they are, it is the main verb in the sentence that tells us whether we can use a gerund or an infinitive. Certain verbs can only be followed by a gerund, and certain verbs can only be followed by an infinitive. And some verbs can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive, but the two meanings will be different depending on which one you choose. So we'll go into that a little bit in a moment. Examples here are, he enjoys swimming. There's your gerund. Enjoy always needs a gerund. In fact, things that relate to like, love, enjoy, those kinds of feelings are usually followed by a gerund. He wants to swim. Want requires an infinitive. Now, there is a list, a PDF in Google Classroom with the verbs that need either the gerund or the infinitive. I need you to read through that list before your test and make sure that you know which ones are which. Now, some verbs are followed by gerunds as objects, right? We've already said that. For example, she suggested going to a movie. Going to a movie. He keeps talking about her problems. So, suggest is one of those verbs. Suggest, say, he suggested going to a movie. He said going to a movie would be fun. Right? Those are verbs that get gerund afterwards. Keep as well. Keeps talking about her problems. Again, go through the list in Google Classroom and you will see what I mean. Some verbs can only be followed by infinitives. For example, she wants to go to a movie. The verb want always gets an infinitive afterwards. Mary needs to talk about her problems. That always gets an infinitive afterwards. All right. I don't know if you can see number 7 there, but I'm going to explain it. Oh, yeah, there we go. There are many go and gerund expressions that we use for sports and for other activities, recreational activities. You can Google a list of go plus gerund combinations. I didn't put a list up for you in Google Classroom that you can Google. But here are some examples. I go swimming. Would you ever go skydiving? So very often when we have go and we follow it with another activity verb, entertainment or sports activity verb, then that has to be a gerund. Very important to remember too is that gerunds are always used after prepositions. Always, always, always. Except for the preposition to. Okay, now there's an exception to that rule, and that is when to is part of a phrasal verb, then it still gets the gerund. But I will explain that in a minute. I will go into that in a minute. But gerunds are used after prepositions. So these prepositions, these are usually verb plus preposition combinations, like you often get in phrasal verbs. And for this reason, when to is part of the phrasal verb, for example, to look forward to is a verb, right? If we use to look forward to, we have to say, and we want to follow it with another verb that's masquerading as a noun, right? This happens in emails a lot. I look forward to hearing from you soon. We never say, I look forward to hear from you soon, because ing follows prepositions in a phrasal verb, even when that preposition is to. And ing always follows all other prepositions. So here's another example. They admitted to. To admit to is a phrasal verb, so it's followed by the ing form. They admitted to committing the crime. Leslie made up for forgetting my birthday. For is a different kind of preposition, so it's forgetting my birthday. He is thinking about studying abroad. So all prepositions get ing afterwards, and phrasal verbs that end in a preposition, even if that preposition is to, will get an ing form, right? The one time where to is not followed by a gerund is when you have a sentence like this. He is going to, like in the future tense, right? He is going to cook, right? We have, but that's the future tense. So I don't want to confuse you by using that as an example, but that's why the future tense has that structure too, because it's all interlinked. Let's see, to as part of the sentence. Okay, let's use a sentence, just a normal present simple sentence. He likes to, right? Now, to cook. As we said before, that there are certain verbs that have to be followed by the to form, right? So certain verbs have to be followed with to, because it signifies to do something, and then that's followed by the verb. So we can never say he likes to cooking, for example, right? So in this case, you have to have the infinitive, because the to is in fact not a preposition on its own, a freestanding preposition, but it is part of the infinitive. And so for that reason, we can never say he likes to cooking, right? So all prepositions, right, except for to, when it is part of the infinitive, are followed by a gerund. When to is part of a phrasal verb or part of the phrase preceding the activity that we want to masquerade as a noun, then it has to be a gerund. So some verbs can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive, but with a difference in meaning. A good example of that would be the verb to remember, right? The verb to remember. Here, Nancy remembered getting married. This means that in this case, remembered followed by the gerund getting means that she has a recollection. So remember plus ing verb plus the gerund, plus gerund, right? This usually refers to recollection, thinking back, right? And remembering, right? When we are using remember in the present, let me just change slides here, sorry. When we are using remember, not in the present, I'm not talking about tenses here, but when we are thinking about something that we have to do in a particular moment, then we use the infinitive. Remember, plus infinitive. And this is not recollection, but a reminder, right? So when we want to remind ourselves to do something at a particular moment in time, we use remember plus the infinitive. Fred remembered to bring sunblock to the beach. In other words, he didn't forget. So you can see there's a different sense there. Now, of course, we also get verbs that can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive with little difference in meaning. And some examples here are she likes to swim or she likes swimming, right? Remember, if we have go plus an activity, then it will always be the gerund. So she likes to go swimming, but not she likes to go swim, right? Now, there are also many nouns that are commonly followed by infinitives. Words like decision, right? Wish, desire are often followed by the infinitive form. This you can also go and look at the lists. There are several lists online where you can look at nouns followed by infinitives. Okay, some infinitives are used to express the idea of in order to do something, right? So we don't necessarily say in order to, right? We drop that in order to and we just use the infinitive form because it's quicker and it's easier. So he bought the English dictionary to look up difficult words. It means in order to look up, but we say it, keep it short and sweet, and we say to look up. Janine sold her car to get the money. It means in order to get the money, right? And this idea is found in many, many, many English patterns. Now, for your test, I'm going to give you two choices of sentences. I'm going to give you, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to give you ones that where it affects the meaning very much. But I'm going to give you two sentences and you have to circle either the gerund or the infinitive. Not one sentence, sorry, with two options to circle. So for example, he decided to go or going shopping. And your job in the test will be to decide, is it the infinitive or is it the gerund? Obviously it is the infinitive and you're going to circle that. It's not a very big exercise in the test and not a very difficult exercise, but pay attention to nouns that are followed by infinitives and verbs that are followed by gerunds and so on. Have a good look at the list in the PDF that I put on Google Classroom. Okay, good luck and see you for your test next week.